Michael McNally.
Present.
Mark Palanch.
Present.
Karina Edmonds.
Present.
Present. Good. I've determined we have a quorum.
Still have Sue.
And Sue, I'm sorry. Sue's at the Trustees. She still has it.
Easy putting a flight on.
I don't think Sue can hear us.
She can't hear us.
Karina, you hear us, right?
I could, but I could only hear you once you started the roll call.
Susan, can you hear us?
I can now.
Susan?
I'm here.
Okay. All right. Are you present,
Present.
Susan?
I'm
Okay,
present.
good. All right, great. So we have a quorum. This is required 6 to 10 members. The first order of business is the acceptance of the agenda. May I have a motion that the Academic Affairs and Research Committee of URI Board of Trustees accept the agenda for the meeting of September 23rd, 2001?
Matt Land, so moved.
Rena Edmonds, second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Being no discussion, I ask for a voice vote. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, say no. Let the record show that by unanimous vote of the committee, the agenda has been accepted. Next item of business is approval of the minutes of the June 24, 2001 Academic Affairs Research and then Student Life Committee. Those minutes are at enclosure 2A for those of you who would like to review them. May I have a message or a motion that the Academic Affairs and Research Committee of URI Board of Trustees approve the minutes of the June 24, 2001 meeting of the committee?
Matt Land, so moved.
Is there a second?
Karina Edmonds, second.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, say yes.
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 All opposed? All opposed? Okay, that motion carries, and the minutes are approved. We'll now go to the report of our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Don Hayes. Might I add before he begins, this will be Don's last meeting as provost of the university. Thanks for everything you've done, Don.
My pleasure. It's been a wonderful run, so maybe I should come on the front. I think some slides are going to pop up there in a second. If I keep my distance, can I do this without a mask? Ellen, I'm afraid Ellen's in the room.
You're 20 feet under there.
Okay.
Perfect.
Good afternoon, everyone, and also thank you to members of the Academic Affairs and Research Committee for your service to this committee and to the university as members of the Board of Trustees. And as Neil mentioned, that this is my final meeting in my role as provost. And I admit it's bittersweet. I could see some sweet opportunities sometime out in the future to unwind a little bit. But I've lived my life, every moment of it in this university for the past almost 14 years. So it's also a little anxiety producing to be separated from all this. But it's the right time, the right thing to do. And I'm so confident the university is great hands with President Barlange, and my colleague who I'll formally introduce in a few moments, Laura Beauvais, as the evening provost. So, as has been a recent tradition since Neil took over as chair of this committee, he's always asked that we start with a report from the chief academic officer. And what I've tried to do is give you some updates of what's happened in the academic side of the house since your last meeting, which was in June. So, Sean, if you could pull those slides up. Are you able to hear me, Sean? So that'll pop up in just a
Just take
second.
1 second. Yep.
You'll see a list of items that I'm going to touch on very quickly. And the first item on there is about reopening in COVID. And I'm not going to say too much about the details of that because two of my colleagues, Vice Provost Ann Bieger and Associate Vice President of Student Affairs and Health Services, Ellen Reynolds, will get into some of those details in the full agenda item. But I did want to make a comment because it was sort of related to my own awareness. At the June meeting of the board, you'll all remember, we sat around a table without masks, everyone fully vaccinated, and enjoyed each other's company as we discussed and debated the issues. And I think most of us came out of that meeting assuming that's what we would be doing in the fall and then in the winter and then out into the future. But here we are just a month or two later, and we're sort of back in a mode not too dissimilar from what we were a year ago, although much further along in many respects. And the enlightening piece for me for that, and messages I think that we're sending around the campus, is that the pandemic isn't going to end because the virus disappears or the number of cases drops to zero. The pandemic is going to end when we recognize that we've moved from a pandemic to an endemic. That is, we figure out how to live and learn in a life where COVID is still there, at least for some years to come. And, you know, I start with that message because it's a critically important message we've been sharing with our faculty and our students. There's a tendency, I think, on campus for everyone to say, let's flip to remote one more time to get through the semester, as if somehow on January 1st, all this will be behind us and we'll be in an entirely different place. It's going to be a gradual transition, I think many of us recognize. And I don't state any of this as a health expert, because I'm not. But I state this because it's probably a new mindset in how we're planning and how we're trying to manage this challenge on our campus, and at the same time keep our campus healthy and our students learning and our faculty engaged in their teaching, research, and service. So if, I guess I can now, can you advance the slides, Sean? Sean, are you there? Oh, there you go.
Yes.
There we go. So this is just a list of topics that we're going to touch on. Enrollment updates. We've begun some work working with, or trying to work with Afghan students and scholars, our diversity and inclusion investments in, over the summer, new deans, new faculty, issues on the horizon, and then I'll introduce our new interim provost who will start shortly. Next slide, please. On? There we go. Enrollment updates. I'm not going to give you numbers, because if I did, my colleague Dean Labuti's on here spying on me, making sure I don't put numbers out there, because our official numbers date is October 15th. And we don't want to put numbers out there that are not correct at the moment, but we will do that at your next meeting for sure. But we're going to have a good enrollment year, and you can see that written up there. But I did want to give you a little bit of context for just a moment. We've recruited a class of first-year students, and everything points to the fact that we will exceed our targets. But we recruited that class without many of them ever stepping foot on the campus. Well, maybe in late spring or summer, they and their parents were able to come to campus. So what that really required was a whole new mindset and mode and series of innovations on how we recruit students. and frankly, also how we retain students that are already enrolled at the university. I give Dean Labouty and his team just tremendous kudos for turning everything upside down to find ways to continue to engage new students, returning students, and not only them, but remember engaging their parents as well as we move to recruit and retain a class of students. We received a little over 25,000 applications for admission this year, about 1,000 more than last year, and that is the highest number in the history of the university. And to give you some context, 10 or 11 years ago, when I arrived and Dean Labouty shortly thereafter, we were getting 14,000 applications a year for admission. So the university's in a different place in that regard. Again, we were engaging students and families, and part of the recruitment was not just they come to an event, whether it's virtual or otherwise, but it was constant contact from the time of that event till the first day of class. And one new item that President Barlange has brought to the campus this year was a new student welcome on the quad. The weather cooperated nicely. There were a couple of thousand students. I think President Barlange shook hands with every one of them with a lot of disinfectant in between. And it was a wonderful way to kick off the academic year during the first week of classes. Next slide. Okay, there we go. As I mentioned, October 15th is the key date for enrollment. We'll get you real numbers on that date. But our target for the budget, which was approved by the committee this morning, was 3,280 first-year students. We are very confident we will exceed that number, which is good news. Out-of-state students in particular is strong. In-state students are lagging, and we'll talk more about that. Transfer enrollment is also, looks like it will exceed the target of 508 transfer students. And I do want to remind people, because it's easy to forget, or maybe you never really understood, that every year our graduating class from URI is somewhere between 20 and 24% transfer students. Students who went to another university or the community college or someplace and then transferred to URI for their last 2 years or 3 years. And what's fairly new data for us that's been climbing over the last 4 or 5 years is that transfer students now are significantly coming out-of-state students. If you went back 7 or 8 years ago, I would say 80–90% of our transfer students were Rhode Island students who then transferred to URI, but we are getting a significant population of students from other states that transfer to URI. I'd like to make the interpretation, but I'm guessing that maybe that is related to a growing reputation of the institution that's attracting students to make the move from where they are to this great place. Graduate enrollment, graduate applications were up about 10 or 12%, and it looks like we will have about a 5% growth in full-time graduate students over last year, which is also, none of this is by coincidence. These are the things we've been striving to do over the last few years. The area of decline is our in-state full-time and part-time students. The part-time we attribute to COVID. Many students, sometimes those are older students, who are taking a class at a time, working their way towards a degree, or maybe working their way towards becoming a full-time student. Many of those students who have stepped out during COVID for family reasons, financial reasons, health reasons, whatever it might be. So that's understandable. The loss of full-time students from the in-state community is partly related to the demographic decline, which is national for certain, more emphatic in the Northeast and particularly in southern New England and Rhode Island. But to be honest, it goes beyond that. We are losing some first-year in-state students to the Rhode Island Promise Program at the community college. We're guessing it's about 80 to 100 students per year, which is unfortunate. I won't editorialize too much on that, but it is unfortunate because I think we will provide a much more effective and efficient pathway to a 4-year degree for those students that they started with us and continued with us, and a much broader range of options of majors as well. Charlie?
Don, is it too early to say, are those students may be coming back as transfer students, or is that?
There's enough cohorts of promise students that we have not seen an uptick in transfers
Okay.
from the community colleges yet. We're working on that all the time. In fact, I think Dean Labudi might be at a meeting as we're speaking right now, still trying to improve that. So, next slide, please. I'll try to move through these quicker. A new initiative in our Vice Provost, Gifty Ako DeNovo, who's on the call here as well, has really done some really great work along with our president in helping us build a connection to the Afghan refugee students, particularly female students that are departing Afghanistan. And we've positioned ourselves well to potentially invite at least 2 or 3 such students. We're also opening the door to scholars who would like to come and spend a semester or a year with us at URI. You can see the president has communicated our commitment to this to the governor's office. We've become part of the Institute of International Education Scholar Rescue Fund. And I don't know, I guess Lil is in the advancement meeting right now, but she and I have talked about some targeted fundraising to support these students. And hopefully, I can say when, if and when they arrive on our doorstep next semester. Next slide. Next slide, Sean, you there? We've been pleased to be able to resurrect some of our international partnerships and programs, but we still have a ways to go here, and some of those that we thought we were going to do looks like they can put on the back burner. But we do have 127 brand new international students joining us this fall, which is a big increase over last year at this time, and numbers kind of returning to fall 19 pre-pandemic. We do have some students studying abroad, and believe me, those students were chomping at the bit all of last year saying, when do I get to go abroad? When do I get to go abroad? But as Peter Snyder was reminding me earlier, some of our international travel classes in J-term have already been put on hold for this J-term, ones that we were planning on doing, which is unfortunate. So we still have some limitations in certain places in the world, and obviously we are very carefully managing risk as we think about those kind of international opportunities. Next slide, Sean. Last June, I shared with you that we had produced a document that really took us the better part of the academic year, entitled Anti-Black Racism, an Academic Affairs Action Agenda for Change. This was a pretty robust agenda, really developed by the campus community with very close working relationships with our faculty senate. Much of this was developed community-wide at our 13th annual academic summit on anti-racism that had about 650 or so faculty participating. It was really quite exciting. It's very important that we follow the release of that document that came out last April, I guess it was April, with a series of investments in the various items on that agenda. And this just lists some of the investments. These are base funding investments. We launched a cohort model for what we're calling the Distinguished Multicultural Postdoctoral Fellows, 3 such positions as a cluster or a cohort in the College of Arts and Sciences. One of those positions has been filled, the other 2 are still under search right now. Those positions will be with us for a year as postdocs, and then we'll transition to tenure-track faculty lines. There was also a cluster hire initiative also in arts and sciences, 3 faculty positions, 1 in gender and women's studies, 1 in art, and 1 in English, that has specific diversity elements to it that we think is going to help us not only diversify our faculty, but our curriculum as well. We were very fortunate to conduct a national search and recruit, and Dr. Catherine John as the first chair of Africana Studies, and she's going to be working with her colleagues to rebuild that department. She came in as a full professor. There were an additional 3 or 4 faculty positions, such as a multicultural psychology faculty position, a faculty position in diversity, equity, and inclusion in the library, and also a position in history that's focused on diversity that we think is going to really help us, again, advance the curriculum. 4 of our colleges will soon have diversity coordinators. These will be assistant deans for diversity in colleges. Those searches are being conducted as one search with sort of connecting to 4 different colleges on the campus. And then we hope next year, or I guess Laura hopes next year, to then add those positions in other colleges as well. Inclusive pedagogy is a big part about delivering the curriculum in a way that connects to all of our students. So our ATL office, which is the Office of Advancement of Teaching and Learning, will soon have a new inclusive pedagogy specialist that's under search right now. And we're also supporting an existing badge program. We put base resources into the existing badge program in our graduate school, which reaches out to graduate students across all disciplines. And it's been a very successful program. Next slide, please. I'll just be quick here. We launched a series of professional development workshops for our faculty late last spring and summer, and 118 faculty participated in these various programs so that they can become sort of more literate and comfortable in bringing diversity into their classroom, both pedagogically and content-wise. Next one, please. Despite the challenges, both financial and otherwise, we were able to, last year, recruit 45 new faculty to the University of Rhode Island. And I say that with some level of pride. I know many of my colleagues at other institutions had no new hires at all, and we've managed to keep the university moving forward despite challenges. I don't know if you can click on that and if it will come alive, Sean. It's supposed to. We'll see if it does.
It's thinking about it.
Okay, well, maybe it's not worth waiting. We have pictures of all of them. We were just going to scroll through them. Let's just go to the next one. I don't want to take too much time. Oh, there's a couple more slides.
Just one moment.
Okay, still thinking. I was going to announce that we hired 3 new administrative hires. 2 national searches led to the hiring of Dr. Anthony Marchese as the next Dean of the College of Engineering. Anthony is the Associate Dean for Engineering at Colorado State University. He'll be joining us this January. We're very, very excited about his arrival. While he's not here yet, he's plugged in on almost a daily basis right now, learning about the College of Engineering, working with Ray Wright so we can make a smooth transition as possible. Ray will be retiring in the very near future. Also, I think on that slide, maybe you could skip it, I could do it from memory. There are issues on the horizon. Two other hires. We also did a national search that led to the hiring of the Dean of our graduate school. Dr. Brenton DeBuff is now the permanent Dean of the graduate school at URI. And some of you may know Anthony Rhode. Anthony was the Dean of our College of Education and Professional Studies. He left this summer, and we did appoint Dr. Danielle Dennis through an internal process as the interim Dean of the College of Education and Professional Studies. And Danielle's already off to a great start, and we're really excited to have her on board. There are some issues on the horizon that you'll be hearing about as a committee over the next year or so. And since that slide's not there, I'm going to try to remember what they are. One is our NECHI. NECHI is the New England Commission on Higher Education. We had an excellent review from NECHI in 2017, but our 5-year interim report will be due in about a year. We have formed a university-wide committee. I'm getting out at a great time since Laura Mulvey will be enthusiastic about leading that effort. So you'll be hearing more about that as we go out into the future. Also, NECHI is pretty much requiring us to revisit the university's mission statement. The mission statement for URI was developed in 2006, and part of the process of strategic planning under President Barlange's leadership and Provost Beauvais' leadership will be revisiting the mission statement of the university. And that's something of importance to the entire board, who really becomes sort of the guideposts of our mission and our adherence to it. There is going to be a robust year of contract negotiation. I see Anne Maria sitting here. She's already anticipating the number the number of interesting contract negotiation conversations she's going to have, but that is certainly a big item on the agenda for the coming year. And then finally, university strategic planning. We have a unique opportunity, in my view, with a new president and our existing plan happening to come to its end right now, to say what is the next, I don't want to say step forward, but leap forward for the University of Rhode Island. I think Laura is going to say something about that later as an agenda item, so we won't get into that now. And then the final thing I would like to say, in addition to thanks to all of you, to my colleagues at the university, this has been, for me, just a wonderful, wonderful run. I've loved every battle, every moment, every budget crisis. It's just been intriguing and fun, and it's kind of what I do. So I'm going to have to keep trying to figure out how to balance my checkbook at home over the next many years. But I do want to take a moment to introduce to you the first person I hired when I came to URI, Dr. Laura Beauvais. And I hired her as Vice Provost of Faculty Affairs because when I was interviewing for the provost job, she asked the hardest but most thoughtful questions. And that's how I met her, as a candidate speaking to someone. And I was thinking, who was that person? She didn't have gray hair then. And so Laura worked as Vice Provost. We worked side by side for 10 years. But more importantly, Laura worked side by side with the faculty at the university as a Vice Provost, building confidence in those faculty, trust with those faculty. And I think she will be ideal working with Mark to bring the university to the next level. So let me just turn it over to say a few words now to my friend and colleague and your next provost, Laura Beauvais.
Thanks, Don. I appreciate that nice introduction, and I appreciate that picture, which is like 15 years old. I do, in fact, have a lot of gray hair now. Maybe it was because I was working with you for 10 years.
That'll do it.
Yeah. I got to say, I want to thank Don. It was a real joy and learning experience working with him for 10 years. I have been following him for the past 6 weeks to get up to speed on this job. And I got to tell you, he's got so much in his head. He manages so many different issues seamlessly, and I can't actually physically keep up with him. I'm shadowing around behind him. I hope to do the job justice. I am looking forward to working with all of you, and I am going to be working with our new president to keep the university going forward. And we'll be in good shape for the permanent provost that comes on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that's our report.
Well, thank you, Don. And on behalf of the committee, I'm sure I speak for all the members, how much we appreciate the work you've done over all these years for the university. But you've also done a lot of work to get this committee's agenda in place and helping the committee to move ahead. So thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Dale.
Next item of business is an update on COVID-19. My understanding is Dr. Ann Beaver is here to do that. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, Ann.
Sean, can you please load the presentation? So thank you, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to come and meet with you today and share with you some updates on how we prepared for the fall semester, as Don mentioned. And then my colleague, Ellen Reynolds, who's the Assistant Vice President for Student Health and Wellness and Director of URI Health Services, will provide an update kind of on where things stand. And I welcome you to interject with questions as we go along and as they occur to you. I think that might be a little more productive than waiting to the end and trying to remember your question again. So please. Sean, you gotta put that in presentation mode, students. But I'll go ahead and get started. As Don mentioned, last spring we had aspirations of no masks and no worries. COVID in the rearview mirror. Universities continue to monitor the situation, obviously, and we have to change things up a little bit. Our goal is to provide for three key things. Yep, that's great, thank you. Three key things that we wanted to keep in mind. We need to protect the health and welfare of the community on campus, but we really wanted to be able to offer students the full experience of being a student, full access to on-campus academic programs, as well as all the co-curricular activities that go along with it. And then the other thing is we realized we have many faculty and staff who got hired after the pandemic started. They never even had an opportunity to visit campus. They never had an opportunity to spend time in their office, meet their colleagues within their department and off campus, other than through a, flat Stanley. That was like their life experience, being part of the community. So it's really critical to bring everybody back and really restore our campuses as a vibrant community of learners who are able to interact with each other, both through formal and informal interactions. So next slide, please. So some of the things that we had to do in order to make that a reality is really think about how do we set ourselves up to provide the safest community possible. So obvious one is to have required vaccinations. That was instituted for students. Back towards the end of the spring semester, communicated to them that by the middle of August, they needed to upload evidence of vaccination or formally request an exemption. And so we've been aggressively pursuing that literally on a case-by-case basis with students to bring them into compliance. Other than maybe about a dozen students who we're still working with on an individual basis, we have 100% compliance of everybody who is affected by this requirement. And we have about 94% of our students, nudging up to 95% of our students who are fully vaccinated. As Ellen will share, a few more keep adding to that tally every day as we go forward. So that's great. Not too long ago, you may have heard the announcement that we're pleased to announce that all of our faculty and our non-classified staff also will be getting fully vaccinated, and so they have until mid-October to do that. And Ellen will provide an update on where we stand with our progress to that. And then we also wanted to make sure as part of this, we had barrier-free access to testing on campus, and that if people wanted to get vaccinated, they had easy access to vaccination. So we provided vaccine clinics weekly throughout the month of August and September, and that included all faculty, staff, students, and anybody in their family as well, so that we were really contributing to the health and welfare of the community as well. Sean, next slide, please. So other elements that we need to put in place, obviously the masks, as it coincided, the state of Rhode Island was contemplating this at the same time that the university was, and so in concert with each other, the state announced a universal masking requirement for everybody going into state facilities. The University of Rhode Island also announced universal masking requirement for everybody indoors on our campuses, regardless of vaccine status. So that's a key element of our safety protocol. We've had pretty good compliance with that. A lot of students need to be reminded of it, and we're giving out free masks to help them comply with that, but it's been quite effective. And then also, we wanted to provide for, as much as possible, improved air quality. This is a key thing that, as we follow the CDC guidance, we did a survey of all of our buildings on campus, what the HVAC systems are in those buildings, did things like set them to maximum air exchange with outdoor air where possible. And then in some of our older buildings, they installed air purification systems. These are heavily used classrooms in older buildings, and to provide, again, for an added layer of safety, because we are using our classrooms at full and regular capacity this semester. Next slide, Sean. I think I'm passing it on to you. So I'll pass it on to Ellen now. She's going to talk a little bit about our monitoring strategy and then our status for this semester. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Ellen Reynolds. Nice to meet you all, and thank you for inviting us here today. So I'm going to pick up where Ann left off and follow through a little bit on what we're doing right now for our monitoring strategy at the University of Rhode Island. So I'm really happy to say, with the support of our senior leadership team, mid-summer, when it became clear that we were going to have to change our strategy as far as testing goes, we were able to re-engage our on-campus testing center in Memorial Union. And that was, in large part thanks to Provost Hayes, Dr. Peter Schneider, who came together with both human resources and the fiscal resources to allow us to have a testing center available 5 days a week in Memorial Union. So our students who are required to test, those who are unvaccinated with an approved exemption, are required to test twice per week right now this semester. And so that is where that testing happens. But in addition to that, we have strongly encouraged our students, faculty, staff, and community members who are vaccinated to get regular testing if they're visiting the campus community. Consistent with CDC guidelines, we're not requiring it right now, but strongly encouraging it. And we're poised to make a change to that policy should we see something different in the data as we continue to monitor what our cases look like. In addition to that, I will tell you that part of our contact tracing team's job is when they're looking for close contacts, both on campus and off campus, they oftentimes find in the 48 hours prior to one becoming testing positive, potential areas where there might have been spread during that exposure time. And we have developed a process by which we send out notifications to those students, faculty or staff, and request that they visit the testing center on day 3 to 5 to do a surveillance test, just to make sure we're not seeing any of the spread. I'm really happy to report similar to last year, this year, we have yet to identify any transmission in classrooms. And honestly, in labs and other experiences, and I'll talk a little bit about what our trends are when I get to that slide. Sean, could you advance the slide, please? So contact tracing, let's talk a little bit about that. That is happening as well. And fortunately this year, the cases are much lower. So the team is able to do a comprehensive approach to contact tracing. Each student who tests positive receives a call from a contact tracer who goes through a detailed history of their potential exposures since they tested positive or since they first developed symptoms, and we actually do a look back for 48 hours. All of the university contacts are contacted by health services. In addition to the Rhode Island Department of Health, who are our partners in this, they also do all the notification for close contacts off campus. So they make sure that they reach out to anybody outside of the university community as well. What we're able to do again is isolate with the data, working with our academic affairs partners, institutional research. It really is a team approach. Any potential trends that we're seeing and looking at testing those people at a higher surveillance than what we're doing with our general population. As I mentioned, we speak with our Rhode colleagues on a daily basis. We update a spreadsheet to them so they know all of our cases. We share cases back and forth in a database and continue to monitor those trends that we're seeing routinely. Next slide, Sean. So let me tell you what some of the data looks like right now. For everybody who isn't aware, the University of Rhode Island does have a COVID tracker, which articulates and demonstrates the number of tests that we do per week, the unique positive cases, and our positivity rate. I will tell you that we are actually working to see if we can augment this and include our cases per 100,000, which would allow us to show our rate, an additional metric within our community. So as you can see, where we're sitting right now is 0.88%, right? I'd like to say that for the entire semester. That shows that we have good control in our community right now, and we feel safe, and it feels like we have a very safe community. What I want to articulate a little bit there is that since the beginning of the semester, so about September 1st, not the first day of classes, but September 1st, we've done over 8,000 tests. We use a PCR test for our surveillance test, just so you know, but we also have the availability for testing 7 days a week at the health center for symptomatic testing. So what that means is any member of our community, any day, can get immediate test if they have a symptom. And that's really where we know we have an effective strategy to be able to quickly identify anybody who potentially has an infection and allow us to isolate them so that there isn't further exposure within our community. In addition to that, if you look at the data from September 1st, we're sitting at about a little bit higher than 1%, just a smidge over. So again, a really good rate for us to be at this point in time. We continue to monitor our compliance and enforcement with those students who are required to test twice a week when we have an approved exemption to make sure that they are compliant and following through. And our data students is working very closely with us on that as well. Next slide, please, Sean. So moving forward again, we'd like to be able to add this additional metric. This is really looking at our cases per 100,000. As you can see right now, the University of Rhode Island is sitting at last week about 186 per 100,000. When you compare us to the state of Rhode Island, we're well below where we're staying right now. And I think that's really, what I want to talk about a little bit is the trends we're seeing. So interesting, if you're in contact tracing and you listen to our students, it's a little bit like that cartoon you might have seen where, someone says they went directly home, but they went all the way around. It's amazing the lives of our students and the interactions that they have. But some of the trends that we're seeing are consistent with what we're hearing in the general public. That those students that are housemates or roommates have potentially higher risk for becoming positive, so we surveil them a little bit closer. Those that are in relationships, those that travel in a car unmasked for periods of time, those are some of the trends that we're seeing. We're certainly seeing our off-campus population test positive at a higher rate than our on-campus population right now. And we're monitoring some of the affiliations and associations with different organizations, but no particular trends clearly identified yet. Again, we're at a very good positivity rate right now, and I think any one of us would be happy to stay here or go further down, but we certainly feel like we have good control at this point in time. We also continue to encourage vaccines. We do see more students becoming vaccinated, just so you know, even those who have an approved exemption become vaccinated. And we'll continue to offer those vaccines available on campus and also within the community so that we can ensure that our students have access. I think at this point in time, Dr. Beaker and I thank you for this time to give you this brief update on Copig, and be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I had a question. Sue Petrovas. So how many exceptions to vaccination have you made, not only just for students, but I guess for the, I would ask for the whole URI community? And how does that, what percentage does that come out to be?
Sure, I'd be happy to take that question. So we are running right now in a student population about 6%, so very low. The majority of those exemptions, are religious exemptions. And within the faculty staff, the number is incredibly low. But again, we're not quite, we're probably at, those who are required under the faculty staff right now, we're at about 70%. And the numbers are less. Emery, correct me what I sent you this morning, but I would say we're probably under 10 combined between medical.
It was 11 combined,
11.
None have been approved yet.
Yeah, and none have been approved yet. We have till October 15th, and I think the approach that we'll be taking will be there a committee that will look at those, but we'll approve them as they get closer or review them as they come.
No, that's 11 combined total, not percentage, correct?
Yes.
So let me just clarify. For students, it's about 6%
Mhm.
of the entire student population.
Right.
So that comes out to about 1,000 thereabouts in our population. For faculty and staff, it's 11.
11%.
Of those who have submitted thus far. Again, I need to clarify that's data of that has been submitted thus far.
Do we require religious exemptions for anything else?
We require religious exemptions for every other vaccine preventable disease.
Is it typically 6%?
No,
What is it typically?
much lower.
Okay.
We only do that though for first year students, just
Yep.
so you know, so it's by Rhode Island Department of Health regulation on first year students, but the numbers are much lower.
Okay.
I have a question as well. This is, can you hear me?
I can agree with, yes.
Just wondering what happens to visitors? Are students allowed to bring visitors on campus?
It's a great question, and currently our visitor policy does allow for them to bring people onto campus. And there is no formal evaluation of their vaccination status. They are required to mask at all times that they're inside the building, including in the residence halls. But yes, they are currently allowed to bring people on campus.
And then
this is-
campus events?
And that's a great question as well. So back to the students' experience of bringing people on campus, this is a key part of our students' ability to have co-curricular activities and be involved. So we haven't restrained any of those activities at this point in time, and we haven't seen any transmission from off-campus experiences. As far as events, we put out a new policy probably a week ago, if I'm correct, thereabouts, and it does have some limitations on larger events. So those over 250 or greater than 35% occupancy for the space that they're being offered are required to have proof of vaccine if they're not affiliated with the university. So that would be students or employees who have a URI ID. So we are asking for vaccine. At this point in time, we are not accepting a negative test, although that has been considered, and that policy is in place right now, but will be revised if necessary throughout the semester, given what our transmission rate looks like on campus.
Thank you.
So I just have maybe two questions if we have time. If a student tests positive in on-campus residence hall, previously they were placed in a hotel, what happens now?
Great question. So right now, we have on-campus spaces allocated for isolation, where that entire area is isolation, and we have a staff member who's overseeing that area to ensure compliance. And our dining deliveries, meals and retreats and that kind of stuff, and we get Uber Eats, and we have the person who's overseeing that doing it deliver it up. And I talk about that because that's critically important to our students. Getting packages delivered is critically important and having access. But they can full Wi-Fi, full accessibility to participate in remote classes as they are able to feel relevant. And I'm really happy to report that the majority of our students have very low level illness or are completely asymptomatic. And that is the majority of the students. We are, of course, seeing more cold-like symptoms now, but with the ability to test with a rapid test, we're doing 70 to 80 rapid tests a day, and we're quickly isolating the test. All backed up with these. Did you have?
Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Just what has been the overall reaction by students and parents and faculty to the requirement? Has it been well received, do you say, overall?
The masking requirement or the testing?
The vaccination requirement.
Vaccination, overwhelmingly supportive. Absolutely. I would say overwhelmingly supportive. Those who are not supportive may have applied for and received an approved exemption and may not be happy with the testing requirement that goes along with that exemption, but overwhelmingly, I think we received both from the community, from parents, from students. And honestly, the rules through the CDC has changed so that if you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to quarantine if you're identified as a close contact. And that really has aided our students in their ability to continue their academics, continue their co-curricular, get a test, be negative, wear their mask. So it's a much, it feels much better this semester. Much fewer people in isolation.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to exercise the prerogative of the chair at this point and ask the committee's permission if I can move the action items up in the agenda so that we can dispose of those hopefully before the reports by Dr. Steiner and Dr. Beauvais. So the first is item 5A. It is the review of awarding undergraduate and graduate degree diplomas, certificates, and honors to be conferred by the president to the candidates who completed their requirements at the conclusion of the summer 2021 term and who are approved by the faculty of the University of Rhode Island and recommendation of the Board of Trustees. Any questions that we can refer to the Chief Academic Officer on this? If no questions, may I have a motion that the Academic Affairs and Research Committee of the URI Board of Trustees recommend that the Board of Trustees approve the awarding of undergraduate and graduate degrees, diplomas, certificates, and honors to be conferred by the President to the candidates who have completed their requirements at the conclusion of the summer 2021 term and who are approved by the faculty of the University of Rhode Island and recommendation of the Board of Trustees.
Matt Len, so moved.
Karina Edmonds, second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
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 All opposed? All right, that motion carries. The second motion is motion 5B. The enclosure, it can be found in your board book. It's the review of awarding tenure for 3 University of Rhode Island faculty members, Dr. Ellen McGow, Dr. Anthony Marchese, and Dr. David Townsend, as set out in the enclosures prepared by the Chief Academic Officer. Don, are there any questions about these 3 actions? All right, then may I have a motion that the Chief Academic that the Academic Affairs and Research Committee of the URI Board of Trustees recommend that the Board of Trustees approve the awarding of tenure for 3 University of Rhode Island faculty members as set out in enclosures 5B1, 5B2, and 5B3.
Charlie Fogarty, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Matt Lenz, seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, may I have a voice vote? All in favor? say
Yes.
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 All opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. I'm now going to turn the floor over to Dr. Peter Snyder, who's going to give us an update on the university research program. Peter?
Thanks. Good afternoon, and thanks for having me today. This is my annual report to the board on how we're doing in overseeing the research mission of the university. And if I could have the next slide, Sean. I'll start just by reminding everyone what the mission is for this institution as it pertains to our research endeavors. Sean. We lost the slide. Oh, there we go. To enable, support, and safeguard our mission as the state's land and sea grant research institution, and accelerate research that will lead to an improved understanding and response to critically important human and environmental health concerns, to catalyze novel research in all disciplines, scholarly and creative pursuits across the university, across all domains of intellectual curiosity, and to support innovative strategic partnerships where only one institution believes strongly in global partnerships. Next slide, please. Just to remind everyone how the division is organized, we have central core services that we provide that are very, very common to every research institution in the United States. Our office has sponsored projects like pre-award and post-award to handle grant submission, research development to help faculty identify new opportunities for grant applications, our research integrity office that oversees the ethics of how we conduct research in human subjects and in animals, how we manage the use of hazardous substances, radioactive substances, and chemical on our campus. And we also have a diving safety monitoring board for our underwater activities. And we are laying plans now for a new small vessel safety board as we bring on a new manager for our small vessel program. We manage external relations with respect to the research mission with our federal delegation. And of course, we produce a number of publications and documentation about the university's research endeavors throughout the year, including our research magazine. We manage all of our animal care in 4 facilities at the moment and are laying plans to build another one and then hopefully decommission facilities that are older and perhaps delicately put past their prime. And we have, I have a new special assistant overseeing special projects, one of which I'll spend a few minutes on later on. On the economic development side of the house, we have the Uri Research Foundation that has several components to it, including our Polaris Manufacturing Extension program, the Rhode Island Small Business Development Center, a new Center 401 Tech Ridge. We unfortunately had to cancel a groundbreaking this past month in Portsmouth where we're building a new facility to support that, but nonetheless, the work is about to commence to renovate a very large space for specialty laboratory facilities to support the research and development of new composite materials in principal partnership with the Navy. More on that in a little bit. We also, of course, manage the intellectual property of the institution. And then the institutes and centers, with the exception of the Ryan Institute, that have spread reach by design across colleges at this university, also fall under our umbrella. So these are the centers and institutes which, as part of their mission, part of their goals, they are intended to bridge across the entire university rather than be housed and utilized principally by a single college. Please, by the way, interrupt any time with any questions. Next slide, Sean. This is our most recent issue of Momentum Magazine. It's available online. You should all get copies. I hope you're on our mailing list. The reason I bring this up at the moment is because in keeping with the practice that we started 2 years ago, we're in the fall issue that will be coming out soon. We will be publishing all of the financial information that you're about to see. So it will be available not just to you, not just to our university committee, but to the citizens of Rhode Island as a way of being transparent with how their investments in our state university are being managed. Next slide. So some good news. We have had the best year in terms of research in URI's history. Our total awards went up by $7 million this past year, which is notable given that a lot of our work had to be slowed, never stopped, but slowed during the COVID crisis this past year. So this is really a testament to the ingenuity, creativity, and energy of our faculty. In looking at the numbers, we separate out COVID emergency funds, and back in the early 2000s, the ERA funds, we don't count that because that's not research. So it's the blue bars that you should pay attention to, and we are at this point, $123 million from all sources. This includes $110 million to our Office of Sponsored Projects from external awards, about $3.5 million to the URI Foundation in private philanthropy grants to aid in research, and another $7 million that came into the URI Research Foundation, also for research of our faculty. Next slide. Just to give you a sense of where we are, about 64% of our total funding is federal, and then we have an increasing amount of research from private foundations, from corporations, from other entities within the state, from other agencies of state government. This is all part of an effort and an interest in managing a diverse portfolio where we're not really beholden to any single federal agency for the majority of our funding, but instead a pretty broad portfolio of funding sources. Just to give you a sense of where we are, again, we're at about $123 million in total awards made to the university this year. A couple of years ago, we set a goal of $125 million in sponsored research funds by 2024. I think we're going to meet that. And just as a benchmark, just looking back a number of years, about 5 or 6 years, we were at $74 million in external funding in 2017. So some pretty good growth.
The university portion, universities are about 9%. I assume that's URI acting as a sub on a major contract held elsewhere, is that right?
That's correct. Yes, that's exactly right. Next slide. And if you're interested in where our funding is coming from by agencies of the federal government, we have a fair amount, actually it's almost equal between Department of Commerce, NSF, and Health and Human Services. As you pointed out, next would be subs from other universities on major awards where we are co-investigators on large program project grants, and then many contracts with the state, and then it goes down from there, USAID, USDA, and so on. Next. And certainly it remains the case that our Graduate School of Oceanography is the largest recipient of external funding. It also has some of the largest programs. It's not cheap to manage an entire research vessel. And we are running programs overseas in a number of countries and received a wonderful award about a year ago for an underwater exploration institute that is managed through through the graduate school of oceanography. Other colleges that are just doing fantastic work include sales, engineering, pharmacy, and then certainly we have a lot of clever, wonderful activity going on across all of our colleges, but also room to grow in a number of those colleges. Next slide. So this past year, we have been engaged in a massive process of completely revising, updating, and switching to a new electronic management system for all of our research. This is not an easy process. We contracted with InfoEd, and we were able to make this switch. We were delayed by about 3 months because of COVID slowdown with our partner, both with InfoEd and frankly with our own staff. So we needed to extend the contract with Cayuse, our former provider, for another couple of months, for an extra couple of months. That did lead to our incurring some additional unforeseen expenses, about $40,000. But we are back on track. The pre-award module has been working since February, and our faculty are making that conversion. Converting from one software package to a new one is never fun, never easy. It's never met with universal praise, but it needed to happen, and we will very soon have a much more integrated platform with greater transparency. Transparency for our investigators who need to know where are their applications, who signed what, when, and why is something late, and they can just see it on the dashboard. And also for our administrators and academic leaders across every college that really need the same information about their faculty. So the idea is to create a much more integrated, seamless, transparent system that is really better for everyone. We have some challenges ahead. We have to connect the post-award module to our personnel and financial databases at the university. That hasn't happened yet. It's a very complicated process, but we are working on it, and I think this was certainly the right way to go and will help us in the future. Just simple things like querying how many projects and what kind of awards are we receiving because we have a nano imaging core facility. To answer that question would have taken days and combing through reams of paper folders and Excel spreadsheets. And those sorts of questions that help us make strategic decisions about what are we supporting and why will be so much easier with this electronic system. Next slide. Okay. In our research development office, we provided internal seed funding for 6 awards totaling $75,000 and career enhancement awards principally in the humanities and social sciences and arts totaling $30,000 this past year. This is down over previous years primarily because this past year was not an easy budget year, and we really had to be creative about supporting critical infrastructure and needs during the middle of a pandemic. I certainly hope to bring that up in future years, as everybody here knows who's heard me talk about this before. I think our seed grant program is one of the most important things we should be doing. We did an analysis a couple of years ago showing that the return on investment for faculty who then have these seed grants and then go on, once they collect pilot data to go after external funding, has returned a 12-fold return on investment from our seed program. That argues for a lot more investment in this area, and certainly I know it's my goal, and I'm sure it's President Carlangi's goal to make sure that in future years we're able to do that. The Research Development Office also provides a number of workshops campus-wide throughout the year in grant writing, in data use and ethics, and we've been providing specific training materials for individual colleges as needed. This office is about to undergo an entire 360-degree review because I think it could really do a lot more. And Again, as you look at our finances, we have almost doubled in our grant portfolio since 2017. And this office needs to grow with that in order to allow for future success. Next slide. We are also in the midst of trying to create a all-encompassing plan to sustain our core facilities if one of our major program project grants should sunset, namely our EPSCoR or our INGRAE grants. Our cores were largely built on these large multi-year grants, and we're very fortunate to have them. Our INGRAE was renewed 2 years ago, and we just put in our track 1 renewal for EPSCoR about a month ago, for which I'm very enthusiastic. That said, there's no guarantee, and there's no guarantee that after the next cycle we may not lose one entirely. In fact, we should be expecting it. So in preparing for that eventuality, we have to come up with a sustainability model. I've asked my director for University Research Operations, Dr. Carol Thornburg, who's also a faculty member in CELS, to lead an effort to coalesce our cores under one administrative roof, to be able to create a marketing plan and to be able to be more nimble in how we work with industry and commercial partners in order to create a sustainability model that will work long term. This is in keeping with best practices at other regional and national universities of our size and certainly our aspirational institutions. And it's something that we absolutely have to do because our faculty depend on the doors staying open for these core facilities. So more on that as the plan develops. And I know that I'm looking at Abby here. She and I have a lot of work to do to bring the financial side of this together in a way that is sustainable for the long term. Next. Sean? So one of the special projects that we've done over the past 2 years, and we're in our 3rd year of ramping it up, is the Plastics Land to Sea collab. The last issue of Momentum was entirely devoted to this. We have gone in 2 years from over 12 interested faculty on a faculty-led committee to over 50 faculty across 6 colleges engaged in research in this area. We are partnering internationally. We are now working on a think tank meeting in Washington, D.C. that we plan to hold in the spring. Our partners include the Global Council for Science and the Environment, the British Embassy, and the French Embassy. We are also looking to partner with RISD, as the topic of the think tank meeting will be the future of textiles and fast fashion and the impact on human pollutants in the ocean. So we think that RISD would have a lot to contribute to that, and we have been working with RISD actually much more closely in recent years in many ways. In fact, now we handle all regulatory affairs for their research, and they use our IRB and have a member of their faculty sitting on our IRB. So this is a partnership we want to enhance, and we see a lot of potential with them. We helped design this year's honors colloquium, which got off to a wonderful start with a fantastic lecture the other night. And 3 of the lectures towards the end of the colloquium will be on the topic of plastics pollution in our oceans. We are hoping to have a public launch in the spring. That's been delayed. We've kicked the can down the road on that 3 times. Because of COVID, I really do think this needs to be an in-person event. I don't think they'll have the same impact virtually. So we're still trying to work on that. As a result of this activity, we've gone from $4 million to $8 million in external funding in the past couple of years. And the Track 1 award for our next EPSCoR is on human contaminants in our world's oceans. One of the big ones, not the only one, one of the big ones is plastics. And that will lead to potentially $20 million over 5 years of funding for this work. We also have a federal earmark request in that would help stand up the administrative side of this so that we could bring on and rise up our faculty leadership to run the collab permanently out of the Coastal Institute. And then my hope is that by the end of this year, we're moving into the next collab it's my long-term hope that we have 3 or 4 of these running at one time across the university. And again, the goal is to tie our faculty across colleges and bring them in a way that is inclusive and relies on the multidisciplinary expertise of our scholars in economics, political science, sociology, education, areas that are not generally as involved in the research mission as we want them to be, and hope that they will. One indicator that this is happening is that for the first time in our Next Steps course submission, we have 5 thrust areas. One of them is entirely focused on social science and policy. That has not happened before in an EPSCoR award, not ours, and probably very few nationwide. And I'm particularly proud of that. Any questions so far? Okay, next slide. Another unit within the division is our diving research and safety program. We have had a great year despite the pandemic. We continued with one break in one semester. We are still teaching classes now with safety precautions as appropriate. We established a Marine Technical Certificate Program with the College of Environment and Life Sciences. We received a Champlin Foundation Award this past year for new photography equipment. And we are now designing a new facility on the Bay campus as part of the phase 1 expansion. That would be fantastic. This is really a regional and national exemplar of how a safe, large, well-supported research diving program should be run. And our staff in this division are being asked to present all over the country to help other institutions create similar programs. Next slide. Sean?
I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm getting aware of the time, and I want to be sure that.
Okay, you have all these handouts. I already talked about the EPSCoR track 1, I think. Yeah, fingers crossed. Next slide. Our Small Business Development Center, this past year, 873 clients. We've raised 24 million and change in capital for state economic growth. 38% of our clients are minority clients, and nearly 50% are female-owned businesses. 37 training programs in multiple languages, including Spanish and Portuguese. And these are extremely well attended, all these seminars that we provide. So the Commerce RI really depends on the Small Business Development Center for an awful lot, for helping any small business get started, apply for their first bank loan, develop their first business proposal. We are the preferred partner for this. Next slide. I would prefer, actually, we're going to shift, and if I can come back in November to speak about Uri Research Foundation, that might be a better use of time. That's a topic unto itself, but suffice it to say, it's been incredibly busy. As just one metric, we have gone in the past several years from a research foundation that has a annual expenditure budget of about $1.5 million to an $8 million foundation today. That's within the past 2 or 3 years. So we are growing fast. We've got some exciting programs. Next. I'll come back and talk about Polaris when I speak next time about the Research Foundation. Next. Coral and TechBridge is just worth mentioning. This is one of our innovation campuses started in the state. It is, again, building its facility. We have contracts already with a few companies. We have been purchasing large equipment and making them available not only to our faculty for research purposes, but also for companies to use for their pilot runs and early manufacturing testing needs. We are also beginning to return grants to investigators for the first time, which is a nice thing to see. This past month, $110,000 to support university research. Yes. So just for economic, if you can just click through this pretty quick, Sean. Keep going. One more. There you go. Just to remind everyone, it still holds true that we are returning $3.50 for every dollar invested by the state of Rhode Island or externally in terms of economic growth. We have programs that really are second to none. We have important things to cover this next year. Planning for our animal care facilities, we have a serious space problem. We have to reimagine, continue to reimagine the role of the Research Foundation. We're looking at important new areas of expansion and development on, to support the state of Rhode Island, including advancing a massive blue economy initiative, and more on that later. We still have a lot to do with our innovation campuses, and hopefully that work will continue with the new RFEI that's supposed to come out, I hope soon. We again need to plan for long-term sustainability of our core research facilities. We're starting a second collab with a quiet phase where we're putting together a white paper, and then we'll bring together a faculty-led committee to lead that again. And we're in the fourth year of a 4-year strategic plan that I put together when I came here 3.5 years ago. And I'm still focusing on professional development and hiring and promotion of a diverse staff of creative professionals. I'm happy to say that we've made hires in this past year that are just mind-blowing in terms of their ability, their creativity, and their energy. And if I can continue to hire the way I've been hiring this past year, I'm going to hire my way out of having a job. They're just tremendous. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Peter, thank you. Any questions for Peter? Very enlightening. And I would recommend that we come back in November to discuss foundation and its interrelationship with the rest of the campus. Sure. Good. All right. And now, soon to be acting provost, Laura Beauvais. We'll talk about academic strategic planning.
Yes, and I will be blissfully short. I have no slides, so Sean, thank you very much. I don't need the slides. I just wanted to give you a preview of how we approach planning in the past. And I'm pleased to note that President Carlon has only been here for 2 months, and in between everything else he is doing, he has managed to get us started on thinking about university planning. So we will develop our academic plan, as Provost Hayes said, our current one is ending, in tandem with the university planning process. And it will be, the academic planning piece will be integral to that plan. And in the past, we've had a process where we've been very engaging of the community in doing that. In our view, the process of doing strategic planning is just as important as what comes out in the planning process. So we have plans to engage the entire community in doing academic planning. And we really have already started. We've had a dean's retreat in August where we talked with the deans about some vision themes for the future, potential barriers to getting to that future, and then the kinds of resources we would need. So we have already got that process started by looking at what we may do, how we may do it, and what barriers we need to deal with in going forward. So those retreat ideas have been examined. We've presented them to the President's Leadership Council. And the next step for academic planning will be engaging what we call our Joint Committee on Academic Planning. We believe in and actually practice shared governance with the faculty, and that committee, we call it JCAP, it is a joint committee between administration and the faculty that has various members from across the community involved, but important faculty chairs of committees on that particular council. And that council, by university mandate legislation, is engaged in looking at the plan, making recommendations and monitoring it for success. You all have a copy of the ending academic plan, and you will see that we have goals, strategies, action plans, and then we also have the metrics associated with that plan. We don't have that in the plan itself, but you can go online and see all the metrics. And I think that this has been shared with this board before. So we will engage JCAP in that process, and in fact, JCAP is highly engaged in two of those other things that Provost Hayes mentioned earlier, and that is looking at the mission and also looking at the accreditation in the report and developing some feedback for that report. So we will engage JCAP in that process. Another thing we have done is hold academic summits. In every January, I think this will be the 14th academic summit, we will engage the community further in providing input and feedback on where we are on the planning process. So I just wanted to give you an overview of the process as we go forward. You will be hearing more about the process as it unfolds, and in fact, you review and approve the academic plan in the end. So I'm entertain questions if you haven't, but I know that we'll come back to this topic in the future.
Or just one question, maybe actually for both you and Mark. Do you have a timeline in mind, Mark, about when you probably get to the point of a new strategic plan?
So we're really going to be warming up now in October. It's probably going to take, so we'll have a broader retreat, probably end of October, November. I suspect it would probably be the end of the spring semester where we would have something to come here. But as Laura said, it's very important that we allow people to, in a meaningful way, engage and to be part of it. And I think one other thing I would like to maybe emphasize, Neil, is that we're going to have it's one university, so there's one university strategic plan. There's been a tendency, we're going to have, obviously, academic piece of that is a crucial piece, but we're expecting to have all the operations of the campus, student success. We're going to be underpinned by a strong EDI piece in this, with our mission for social justice. So we're going to, but I want us to, as a community, to actually stop and think hard about what kind of university do we want to become. What do we want to talk about in terms of excellence, entrepreneurial, what will we do in innovation? Are we serious about growing our international piece? So these are all questions I think we are going to have to grapple with as a university and as a university community.
Great, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Laura. And one thing I will agree with is that the critical importance process, and how much widespread buy-in means to getting the plan done in the end. Not finishing the plan, but actually implementing it. So we're looking forward to it. It'll be interesting to see. Yeah, that's right. Okay, thank you. I think we've gotten through all the business. It's 6 minutes to spare, so we're going to take the 6 minutes. Yeah. Apparently not. Okay, so do I have a motion?
Maybe we should give a 6-minute speech.
Yeah.
Very efficient, Mr. Chair.
Well, I think most of us have 6-minute speeches in us. We're better served by no invitation. So do I have a motion to adjourn the committee?
So moved, Charlie Cooper.
Seconded, Matt Lenz.
Okay, can I have any discussion on the adjournment? May I have a voice vote? All in favor say yes?
Yes.
Okay. And our next meeting will be.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
See you,
Will be on
Karina.
November 4th. Thanks, everybody.